Now, I do want to put a full disclosure. This video does talk about a significance of rape. And so if this video is kind of triggering for you, this is not that video for you. So I do apologize in advance. What's good, guys? Welcome back to CRIMETOBER Day 6. Can you guys believe it's about to be a whole week? Aren't you proud of me? Welcome back, guys. Today's episode is another crazy one. And I know I say that all the time, but every time I go and research a case or someone tells me about a case, I'm always so baffled by just the facts of the case. Now, this one is definitely one where I'm like, I never heard about it. And it could be because I was young. Well, if you have heard about it, it's called the East Coast Rapist.
The accused East Coast rapist taken into custody on Friday. Aaron Thomas faced a judge in Connecticut yesterday. He's accused in 17 rapes in Virginia and other states dating back to 1997.
Now, the East Coast Rapist, he literally went on a string of 13 years of raping women. And he literally was on the East Coast doing these things. He went from Maryland, Virginia, to Rhode Island, to Connecticut, where it is said that he has 17 victims, but there are 12 that are pretty much in the database, if that makes sense. So we will just be touching on who the East Coast Rapist is. And his case was included because his last victim was actually on October 31st of 2009. Now, he has been caught. He was actually caught in 2011. And as you will go through this story, you will see what kind of monster this man truly was. 39-year-old Aaron Thomas, at the time of when he was picked up in 2011, went on a 13-year spree of raping women across the East Coast. In his early 20s when he first began this reign. And dating back to his history, it had been stated that Aaron went through a lot in his family. His father was very abusive and he had been kicked out of his home. And so he was pretty much in a low space. Not that this is any excuse, just wanted to give you guys a glimpse of who this monster truly was, because I felt like he used what he was going through to go after and attack women. So his first victim occurred on February 19th, 1997. It was a young woman who was around 25 years of age walking down the Marlboro Pike in Forestville, Maryland, when suddenly a man on a bike with a ski mask, a gun, and camouflage outfit on. At first, he sparks a conversation, and then he brings out the gun and basically starts this reign of attacking women. And the thing about it is, as I read, he would never hit them or anything like that. He would just use a scare tactic to get these women to go with him to rape them. Of course, after the rape, DNA evidence was taken in and it was put into the national database. But sadly, this would not be the last rape that would happen in Prince George's County, Maryland. He would go on to commit more rapes. And I'm just like, what in the hell? So the media gave him the name as the Bicycle Rapist. And it had been stated that he must have been watching the news, because this is when he began to change more of his MO and how he would approach women and how he would go after them. He would then start to use a knife when approaching these women. And I'm like, you go from a gun to a knife, and then you no longer use the bicycle. So now you're just walking or in your car approaching these women. And so the media did put it out there, to be on guard, because he would go off and commit more of these rapes within Maryland. So by the summer of 1999, he leaves Maryland and heads to Fairfax, Virginia. It had been stated that he would be seen near gas stations and bus stops during the night. So one night during the summer of 1999, a woman is said to be walking home with her groceries when she was attacked from behind and picked up off her feet and taken behind a building. And this is when the East Coast rapist would basically take off one leg of her pants and one shoe, and he began to do this with multiple victims after this lady. He did this because it would make it harder for the victim to run when he was attempting to rape them. So by November 2000, this is when the East Coast rapist decides he wants to switch it up again. He wants to start going to townhouses and apartment communities. So on one evening, he locates a 35-year-old woman. But what he did not know is that this woman would have military background, and he literally attacks this woman from behind and puts her in like a chokehold. And what he didn't know is that this lady knew how to fight, okay? So she ends up tussling and wrestling with him, and again, he has the knife. And so she was able to, I guess, like stab him in some sort to get the DNA. Law enforcement was able to put that DNA to the database and was able to basically say, okay, this is this man who raped a woman back in 1997, and that's when he began to form the name the East Coast Rapist. In May of 2001, he begins to strike again. This time he's in Leesburg, Virginia, and he basically goes after a woman in an apartment complex, and this woman sadly was moving into her house, y'all, and she just sent her son off to go to his taekwondo lessons. And as she's going into the apartment, you know how it is, you're putting things up. She thinks her husband is coming behind her, y'all. Can you imagine? She thinks her husband is coming behind her, wrapping his arms around her. When she looked down, she noticed that it was not her husband's hands. And when she tried to, you know, move from him, he basically told her to shut up or he would kill her. And he ends up changing his MO again. This time he had a Phillips head screwdriver, and he also brought some tying up, you know, shoestrings or whatever. And he tied her hands up above her head, put her shirt over her head, and then began to rape her. And she tried to pull the method of not breathing, and he basically, you know, pulls the shirt down and says that he lives across the hall or something, and that she better not call the police or whatnot. So when he left, he took her clothes and whatever she had, because again, she was moving, and all she could put herself in, wrap herself up in, was some old Christmas wrapping paper. And she went to go bang on, you know, neighbors' doors to call 911. So several days after Christmas in the same year, 2001, a woman was running late to work, pulls her into the area near the bus stop, and he did the same MO as prior, where he would take one leg out and one shoe, and he began to rape her. And as she began to, you know, pray and chant, he basically told her like he's not going to stop, and that, you know, it felt too good, which is absolutely sickening as hell. He ends up letting her go, basically telling her to count from 100, and by the time she got to 30, she ended up rushing back to her apartment, you know, where her husband, and she wanted to actually shower, but good thing her husband was like, no, you need to keep the DNA so that way we can give it to law enforcement or whatever. And luckily she did, because it could keep building, you know, onto this case, because this man again has done a reign of fire. So in August of 2001, law enforcement ends up finding out that he actually raped 2 young girls. This time he upped it. Like, so yes, he raped someone in December of that same year, but then law enforcement ends up finding out that he actually raped 2 young high schoolers as well. About 4 to 5 years, because some reports are off, he basically takes a break from raping women. In November of 2006, he basically goes to another family home and he tries to break into the sliding door. 11-year-old girl was basically in the living room, and the dog begins to bark, and her mother basically tells law enforcement that he must have thought that she was home alone. And luckily for law enforcement, he must have was doing something, because he ends up leaving semen behind, bodily fluids or some, you know, of some sort behind. So they were able to put that in the database and match it to the East Coast Rapist. So now we're in 2007, and it's January 10th. He has moved on from Maryland and Virginia, and he moves on to New Haven, Connecticut. He breaks into a woman's home, and the woman also has a baby in her room that is in the crib. He tells her if you scream, he will harm the child.
It was right over there, those apartments over there where he raped her at.
Including the attack of a New Haven woman in 2007. Police say Thomas climbed through a window and raped the woman in her bedroom. He even threatened to kill her baby.
And he tells her how she shouldn't have left her window open, and that because that's how he broke into it. But law enforcement believe he chose that apartment complex because it was more so pushed back and hidden from plain sight. And so he breaks into this woman's home and begins to rape her. And it has been stated that he also broke into other women's home within that time frame in 2007, but there was no DNA evidence collected. It has been stated that in these certain cases, it has been stated in these certain rape cases, he had used a condom, but these women had children in the home as well. So I believe he probably scouted them out and knew that they had children before, actually going after them. 3 teenage girls, 2 were 17 and 1 16, were out trick-or-treating in Woodbridge, Virginia, when here comes the East Coast rapist. He comes behind them with a gun and orders them to go down in an embankment near a ravine. He begins to rape one of the girls, and one of the other girls begins to text her mother saying that a man is raping her friend behind the CVS building, and she tries to call 911 as well. And good thing she worked like magic to just like try to dial someone to get the attention. And so her mother was literally coming as the police were coming as well. And he ends up running off and telling them to lay down or whatnot. And law enforcement do believe that, this was the trademark of the East Coast rapist. So the police knew a lot about the East Coast rapist. They just didn't know who the East Coast rapist was because he was very smart in how he moved. He wouldn't really get into legal trouble, so that way his actual DNA was not inside the national database, but his DNA was. So he played it very cool. And so police knew that he raped over 12 women, but they believed it had been over 17, possibly more. So police would begin to let the media know, and of course people watching, his MO, how he operated. He would basically start a conversation and then he would flip the switch in getting you to go with him to be raped. And I'm just like, this man, like, he was moving, okay? He was moving. Law enforcement were just stumped. They didn't know who it could be, but they knew that this man was very smart. They knew he would not show his face, and he just knew what he was doing, pretty much. That would all come to an end on March 11th, 2011. Police had been eyeing a potential suspect because of a tip that had come in. So law enforcement had their eye on 39-year-old Aaron Thomas. He was an unemployed truck driver, and he had been currently going through some court proceedings because he had went for larceny. And so law enforcement had been eyeing him in New Haven, Connecticut. So one day he's outside the court and he has what? A cigarette. Do y'all know how dumb this is? You so smart but so dumb at the same time. Because I think he really thought he was getting away with it. I really do. So at this point, he just didn't care. He may have not been raping women, but he definitely was not in an I don't care mode. You can already know what happens next. They test the cigarette butt for DNA, and it turns out it is in fact Aaron H. DNA that matches all of these rapes that happened on the East Coast.
We are proud of our investigation and hope the arrest of Aaron Thomas brings some closure to our victims in our communities.
Now, when they got him, he basically finally admitted that it was him, and why didn't they get him any sooner? But what's so cowardly of him is he tried to commit suicide in jail. Like, sir, bye. You had the balls to rape these women. You need to have the same balls and stand up for what you did. So in November 2012, he pleads guilty for, the rapes of the 3 teenage girls. And he tells law enforcement that basically he rapes 2 of those 7. He raped 2 of the 17-year-olds, and he did not rape the 16-year-old because he stated that she was tiny. So he ends up getting 3 life terms, for that case. So then for the next case, he got 2 life terms because he abducted the lady from moving from her apartment and the rape. So he ended up getting 2 counts for that. So Aaron would tell law enforcement that he did change his appearance so that way it did not match any of the sketches that would appear on TV. And he admitted that he was glad that he finally got caught. He didn't think that he said he only saw himself as a predator, but the people in the court was not standing for that. Like, you ruined these people's security, you ruined these people's like just sense of freedom, and just, you know, some parts of them is gone because of what you decided to do, because you had an urge, you know, what you were battling in your personal life. You decided to take it out on these victims. That is the case of the East Coast rapist. He had raped over a 13-year span and raping probably more than 17 women, more than what I even described. There's just not really a lot of information on some of those other cases, but he did that. And he will spend the rest of his days in prison for what he has done. And very sick. It's just very sick. That is today's episode, guys. I'll see you tomorrow in day 7. And as always, I'm sending all the love and prayers to the victims in this case, because I truly cannot imagine, you know, what they went through, the horror, you know, being such afraid, thinking that your life was probably over because of this person and what he decided to do. I'll see you guys tomorrow, guys.